Most income ETF coverage treats all covered call funds as a variation of the same thing. High yield, monthly distributions, options overlay, pick one, buy it, collect the check, and the approach works until you slowly realize that you've built a portfolio with 5 different fund names and one actual source of risk. The S&P 500 on a bad quarter. The more interesting question isn't which covered call ETF has the highest yield right now. It's how to build coverage across genuinely different risk exposures so that when one segment of the market gets hit, your entire income stream doesn't go quiet at the same time. And that's what this breakdown is actually going to be about today. The covered call ETF market has expanded dramatically. We know this. There are now hundreds of funds in this category targeting yields from ranges from 8% to above 20%. The core mechanism, selling call options on underlying equity portfolios and distributing the premium as a monthly income, is the same across most of them, okay? What varies the underlying exposure, the option strategy layered on top, and how each handles the trade-off between current income and capital preservation. Okay, that last point, capital preservation, is really what separates the funds worth examining from the ones worth avoiding. Look, a fund paying 25% annually with a consistent NAV erosion isn't generating income, okay? It's liquidating your capital on a delayed schedule. The headline yield, sure, is real. The sustainability of the capital base generating it ain't. Sorry to break it to you. The interesting development in this space is the expansion beyond S&P 500 and NASDAQ exposure though. There are now some credible liquid covered call funds targeting small caps, commodities like gold, and even individual sectors. Each of those categories carries different volatility profiles though, different premium environments, and different behavioral characteristics in market downturns especially. And understanding those differences is what makes diversification across them way more meaningful rather than just cosmetic. So here's how I kind of evaluate any covered call ETF. It really starts with 2 big questions before I look at yield, that's for sure. First, what does the underlying exposure actually do in a significant market downturn? An S&P 500 covered call fund and a small cap covered call fund will both decline in a broad sell-off. We know that, but they don't behave identically. The S&P fund's large cap defensive heavy, composition tends to hold up way better than a fund concentrated in small companies with more balance sheet sensitivity to rising rates or tightening credit. Knowing the behavior of the underlying tells you more about the real risk than the option strategy layered on top. Second, is the options overlay designed for income or designed to maximize options coverage? A fund that sells calls on 100% of its portfolio generates maximum premium, but it surrenders all price appreciation when the market rallies. A fund that sells on 60 to 80% preserves some of that upside way more, which stabilizes NAV over time. That design choice is visible in the fund's prospectus and its long-term price chart. Any fund with consistent NAV erosion over multiple years has its coverage ratio answered literally in the data. And those 2 questions structure everything in the breakdown that I'm going to give y'all, okay? So let's talk about S&P 500 covered call funds, right? The S&P 500 is the default underlying for most income investors entering this space. SPYI really remains one of the stronger options here for taxable accounts specifically. Its use of the S&P 500 index options give it Section 1256 tax treatments, which splits between 60-40 between long-term and short-term capital gains, and it has generated significant return of capital distributions as well. That tax structure matters enormously if you're holding this in a taxable brokerage account where ordinary income on distributions would otherwise cost you 22 to 32% depending on your specific tax bracket. But for investors prioritizing maximum current income over tax efficiency, particularly inside a Roth IRA where classification is really irrelevant, funds using 0-day to expiration or full coverage strategies can generate higher nominal yield, okay? The trade-off is that full coverage means limited appreciation when the S&P blows up. In a strong bull market, these funds, they lag significantly in total return. Let's talk about NASDAQ covered call funds. QQQI has established itself as the benchmark for this category among the tax efficient index options funds. It holds the full NASDAQ 100 passively and it sells index options on a partial basis, preserving upside exposure while generating a yield in the 13 to 14% range, right? The partial coverage is why its NAV has held up across multiple market conditions, where full coverage NASDAQ funds, they have declined, and it is so noticeable. The active management alternative in this category, JEPQ, and its a newer successor, ROCQ, takes a different approach by selecting NASDAQ stocks rather than holding all 100. The active selection has contributed to relative outperformance in sideways markets, but introduces manager discretion as a variable. The tax efficiency comparison between QQQI's index options and JEPQ's ELN structure favors QQQI in a taxable account. ROCQ, which JP Morgan recently launched to address this tax drag, uses standard call options instead of ELNs, but it's too new, in my opinion, to evaluate performance. Worth watching for sure over the next 12 to 18 months. It's on my watch list. Let's talk about the small caps covered call funds. This is the category that gets really very little attention and arguably provides really the most meaningful diversification benefit. Small cap stocks are structurally different from large cap, right? They're way more sensitive to interest rate movements, particularly floating rate debt, and their options chains carry higher IV because the underlying companies are way more volatile. So higher implied volatility obviously means richer premiums for the same relative strike distance, right? IWMI from NEOS has captured this dynamic, a yield above 14%, generating positive price return over the past year as well. Its partial options overlay on the Russell 2000 Foundation behaves differently from S&P and NASDAQ funds in a risk-off environment, okay? That difference is the diversification you're actually buying here. You're not just a different label on the same underlying. Now let's talk about some alternative exposure like gold, right? Gold has historically been a zero yield asset. You hold it for inflation protection and as a crisis hedge, but it doesn't pay you anything while you wait. Covered call strategies on gold change that. IGLD combines synthetic gold exposure with covered call income using a partial override, so the fund retains meaningful upside when gold rallies while also distributing income monthly. The distribution rate has been elevated because gold volatility has been elevated, right? Higher volatility, as we know, means higher options premiums, but the honest caveat is this: that elevated premium, it compresses when volatility starts to normalize again. The fund will produce income at lower rates in quieter gold environments. It's still structurally interesting as a non-correlated income source relative to equity-based covered call funds. Now, when equities are under pressure and gold is elevated, a common pattern, this category continues generating income while the equity funds are seeing their premiums compress. Now, let's talk about single stocks and sector-focused funds. YieldMax, and similar providers have built a category of covered call funds targeting individual stocks or very narrow sectors. The yields are extraordinary, sometimes exceeding 30 or 40% annually. The risk is proportionally extreme and it is not adequately represented in most of the coverage on these products, okay? A fund generating income from, covered calls on a single stock, Google, Nvidia, whatever the current narrative is, has an entire capital base and income stream tied to the performance of literally one business. If that stock declines 40% in a year, the fund declines 40% and its distributions decline along with it. The wheel strategy and the Ark approach are built on diversification across many positions, precisely because concentration is the source of catastrophic outcomes. Single stock covered call ETFs are the opposite of that. They belong, if anywhere, as a small position in a portfolio that already has broad coverage, not as a core holding. A well-structured covered call ETF portfolio doesn't need to have the highest possible yield in any single category. It needs different categories that behave differently from each other across market conditions. S&P 500 and NASDAQ funds provide broad equity exposure with income overlay, liquid, well understood, with established track records. Small cap funds add a different equity risk profile with higher volatility premium. Gold adds a really non-correlated alternative that generates income in environments where equity-based funds are under pressure. The single stock and the sector funds belong at the margin, if at all, in my opinion. The underlying income stability you're building depends not on maximizing yield, but on ensuring that the categories that you're actually holding don't all compress simultaneously. An all NASDAQ covered call portfolio has a higher headline yield than a diversified one and significant significantly higher correlation risk when NASDAQ specific sell-offs arrive, right? The diversification is real when the categories you hold are structurally different, not just differently labeled. So here's how I kind of sit on all this stuff for myself. Look, I hold JEPI, I hold JEPQ, I hold QQQI as the core of my covered call ETF layer. Those three positions give me S&P 500, defensive exposure, NASDAQ growth exposure, and some tax-efficient index option structure that makes QQQI particularly useful in a taxable account. I am watching ROCQ. I'm not in it yet. I want to see actual distribution history before sizing into a fund that new. I don't hold any single stock YieldMax funds. The yield is real and I understand the appeal, but the concentration risk isn't consistent with how I've built everything else. And I'm not interested in having one stock's bad earnings quarter hollow out an income stream that I'm building to actually be durable and sustainable. I look at the small cap and gold categories as the next layer of diversification I'd add once the core position is established and sized correctly, not because the yield is more, but because they behave a little bit differently. So I got some questions for y'all in the comments. Are you currently diversified across different categories in your covered call ETFs that you're actually holding, or are you primarily concentrating in S&P 500 and NASDAQ funds? And number two, has anyone here added gold or small cap covered call exposure? I'm really curious what your actual experience has been with income consistency across different kinds of market conditions with those. So drop those comments down below. And also make sure, guys, attend the Ark Options Strategy workshop. It'll be the first link in the description of today's video. If you're just getting started with the Ark Options Strategy, you want to learn how to become an income investor and running the wheel strategy to generate income from your portfolio, I think it's a great use of your time. And at the end of that training, I also give you some great free stuff, my 2 premium calculators, as well as my full trade log template. So click that first link in the description of today's video, guys. Remember, sell options, collect premiums, repeat. I'll see y'all tomorrow.